You're listening to Tara Lynn's A Geek Saga podcast. This episode features audio from a previously aired live video webcast. Hi, I'm Tara Lynn of Geek Saga Entertainment, and welcome to episode 3 of my 2001 Walt Disney World College Program 20-year reunion series. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at A Geek Saga, and on the web at ageeksaga.com. This episode will focus on what we as cast members experienced working at Disney on September 11th, 2001, and how our work experiences and lives changed after that. I'm joined by Kim and Bryan. Again, please note that this episode will feature discussion about September 11th, 2001. We will be as sensitive as possible regarding this historical event. And just a quick note from the host, I have no idea why or whether to blame StreamYard or YouTube, but this recording cuts in several minutes into our actual live episode.
And Fantasmic over to the front of the park and doing ticket sales and vacation traveling. So I was brand new, just there for 2 weeks. My schedule was very set in stone. It was a Wednesday through a Sunday. It was usually, mid-morning, so 10 to 5, where the regulars didn't want to work. It was a very straight schedule, and it was easy until, of course, September 11th. I don't know how far you want me to go, but my schedule was pretty set. Yeah, I was pretty set. I'd been there. I couldn't tell you at this point how far along, but it was our version of a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday type, because I got 2 days off, always next to each other. And then I had the 5 days, 7-8 hour shifts. So it was very straightforward AM shifts.
Yeah. I mean, I know I was a little bit behind. I know I talked about this last time. I was a little bit behind most of the people that started the same day as me in terms of where I was work-wise and everything. I want to say I didn't finish training until like right before Labor Day, I believe. So I only had maybe a week and a half of regular work time before, everything happened. But yeah, for me, it was, regular schedule. And I mean, the park was even the people were back in school and kids were back in school and everything. Magic Kingdom, I think, was still not closing till 9 on weekdays. I believe it was 9. It could have been 8, but I think it was 9. So I had this sort of like, noon to like 9:30, 10 o'clock schedule. And, it for like a week and a half. And we were just settled in. Like, I don't know, like I was trying to think back on what was going on at the time, but we were really still in that mode of meeting new people and learning what the party life was like and everything. I mean, I think at this point Kim and I had met our across the way neighbors. It was 4 dudes, and like we were hanging out with them a whole ton. Because I honestly, I think that like I definitely slept in my apartment the night before it happened, but like my friend, I think, may have slept over, like just, we used to just like hang out, like have sleepovers. It just happened to be with a guy. So that's where I was. I know, Kim, you like I said, you finished training a little earlier than I did. So you maybe had 2 weeks or so, but what was do you remember like what was going on like with you? Just same thing as me, or?
Yeah, same thing. Just, diving headfirst into the program, getting to know all the new people around that, all people that were living at Vista, everyone that I was working with, and just going about normal everyday life that it was. And I remember at some point my parents were asking me about going home in October for a wedding, for my aunt's wedding. I'm like, I don't even want to go. I just felt like I was on a permanent vacation, and I'm like, I'm not leaving here. I want to enjoy this to the fullest.
Yeah. I mean, and we were at that point where we were getting at least 40 hours of work a week, but usually more. I think it was probably like average. It was supposed to average, at least based on the schedule that I had, it should have averaged probably 45 a week. So a little bit more than normal. But also that was like, when you take away like unpaid breaks and stuff, it ends up you're paid for 40, but yeah. So were any of us working? I wasn't working, and I know Kim wasn't, because we were in the apartment together. So you said your days off were what, Monday, Tuesday then? Bryan?
I can't remember the exact days off, but I remember I worked on the weekends, and I had a couple days during the week off next to each other. On the actual morning of September 11th, I was off.
Okay.
But definitely, we had went out the night before. What day was September 11th?
I believe it was a Tuesday.
I think
Yeah,
so.
Kim
too,
says
'cause
it was. I could
Monday
hear.
night
I
was-
could see Kim. I could hear Kim mouthing. I can see Kim mouthing Tuesday.
Yeah, 'cause I think that Monday night was Jungle Gyms karaoke. Yeah, that whole thing. So I do remember I was on someone else's floor. I wasn't in my apartment. I was with another vacation planner. His name was Kevin Ford. He was the other guy who trained with me right after I did, not with me. He trained right after I did to be a vacation planner. And I was actually at Chatham when this happened. I wasn't at Vista that morning. So I definitely was off.
Oh, you were at Chatham, were you?
I was at Chatham that morning.
You were supposed to be there. Not overnight, Bryan.
Yep, I was not at Vista. I was at Chatham.
Weird aside, and I think this is something we can talk about in the next episode. I always found it so stupid that if you lived at Vista, you couldn't sleep over at Chatham and vice versa. Yeah. That is nonsense. We're all on the college program. Who cares?
It was so crazy. I had to sneak out of a place to go home.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. That's actually, I was wondering what we could talk about next month, but that's a good thing to talk, like weird college program rules.
Weird college program rules. What were the rules when you were there? That's great.
So none of us were working. You actually had the day off though.
Like yes, you weren't actually had the day. Yeah, we had planned to have the day off. I definitely remember.
Kim, were you supposed to go in that afternoon? I know I was.
I can't remember. I don't know if I was supposed to work that night and then kind of called and said, yeah, no one's working.
Yeah.
Or if I was off. I can't remember our days off. Whether it was Wednesday, Thursday, if it was Tuesday, Wednesday, because it was the same as Bryan. We had 2 back-to-back.
Right.
Because I remember shitty Wednesdays.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I remember those too. I don't remember what days of the week I usually had off, but I definitely was supposed to work that day. So I believe my days off are usually Wednesday, Thursday, but they were supposed to be, at least at the beginning. So I was supposed to work at like 1 or 1:30, maybe 1:45 that afternoon. It was, somewhere around there. I mean, I don't know. So you weren't supposed to go to work or anything. See, because I had to go to work, I was up. Kim was up before me, but I was up fairly early. I mean, I couldn't tell you what time off the top of my head. I probably should have looked this up, but for me, it was like I woke up, like I was technically still asleep when it all happened. I got out of bed like minutes, and when I say minutes, I'm talking less than 5 minutes after the plane hit the Pentagon, the third plane. And like I wandered out into the living area because we had that front bedroom, and Kim was on the couch and like she jumped up and she was like, "The World Trade Center is gone. The Pentagon's just been hit." And I was like, "The fuck is this bitch talking about?" Like I'm half asleep, I'm like still drowsy, waking up, I think I might have drank a little bit the night before, like not a ton, but enough to be just a little bit like out of it. And I went into the little kitchen area and I'm pouring a bowl of cereal, and while I was pouring the milk into the bowl, they were replaying, I believe, the second plane hitting the World Trade Center, and I was just like, all of a sudden, like what Kim had said, like hit me, along with that visual, and I poured milk like all over the counter. I mean, it just kept going into the cereal bowl, and then it was out of the cereal bowl and all over the place. It was a lot.
I'm right there with you. I was so confused at what was going on. I saw the second and the third plane, and I'd been woken up for the first plane, or been made aware. I shouldn't say woken. I was made aware of the first plane, and I didn't get it. I remember just not being confused, and then seeing it just like I don't get it. And the severity of it took a while for it to actually set, because I have no attachment to New York whatsoever. Like I don't have any family or friends in New York for the most part. But then it started taking on the toll when I realized what actually was going on. For me, it took, I would say, a half a day for me to really realize how encompassing this was. First thing that happened was we got a phone call saying you're not going to go to work the next day. So that was with the guy who I worked with. So I remember getting a call saying, hey, he was all that we weren't going to be working the next day, but I still it didn't land on me for a while. I was that oblivious, unfortunately.
Yeah, Kim, I mean, out of the three of us, because I'm with Bryan, I'm from Connecticut, but like at the time I had one friend from high school who I was pretty close with, who I believe had just started his freshman year at it's Wagner on Staten Island. And I had some like extended family that lived, on the Upper East Side. Like these are like my aunt's parents, but not blood related, so like and they were retired and everything. So it was like, there wasn't really any attachment there for me other than, I go to New York City a bunch because I lived an hour and a half away. But Kim was, I mean, you were up earlier. So like did you see it happen live? I honestly don't. You must have seen the Pentagon one or heard it, or at least heard about it, because like I said, when I woke up, that's like the first thing you said to me was like the Pentagon had just been hit.
Yeah. I think I usually like woke up around 9. So I don't know if I woke up just before that. I remember hearing the other roommate, Danny, like screaming and crying. And I'm like, what is going on? Like not aware, like, why is this woman freaking out so early in the morning? And so I went to her room and she's crying, and they had like a tiny little TV in their room and she's watching. And I was just like, again, like what the hell just happened? It didn't seem real. And I think as it went on, I found out one of the planes left from Boston. I was like, holy shit. Like, is there anyone I know on that plane? Like, what's going on? And that's, I might have seen like the second plane hit. I can't remember the exact time and what time I exactly woke up, but I remember being awake for the rest of it and just not getting away from the TV like the whole day.
Yeah, and I don't remember how many days Disney was closed, to be honest. This was I know that it was the first time they had closed since like 1994 for like, it was for a hurricane, and it was like a partial day.
I think it was Hurricane Andrew.
Hurricane Andrew was 92.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was early. Yeah, it was early 90s. So maybe it was a hurricane. Maybe it was something else. But they closed for like a partial day. I honestly don't remember how many days they were closed, because I'm 99% sure that day that I was supposed to go to work was my Friday. So I didn't have to work the next 2 days, but I think that was planned. Like I only actually missed that one day of work. And I mean, I remember we were so confused. So none of us had cell phones or anything, right? And I mean, or if you did, you certainly didn't use them. So I'm pretty sure we found out that the parks were closing by the TV. Like the TV told us, like I had the little scroll bar at the bottom, like Disney World closing.
The ticker.
Yeah. And I know I had friends who were already at work that morning, and I wish I could have gotten some of them to join in on this, but weirdly enough, like the one who was really interested in wanting to works at Universal right now. So he's working Halloween Horror Nights tonight and couldn't make it. But like I had a few friends that were working that morning, which is weird because college program doesn't usually work early hours, except for, fancy ass vacation planners over here. But, I remember them talking about like kind of shuffling people out of the parks, and everybody we were all so confused because again, this was before, like if this had happened, God forbid if this had happened, in the more recent years, everybody would have known about it immediately. It was like with the COVID closures and stuff, like they knew everybody knew what was going on. Like the minute Disney decided they were going to be closing the next day or whatever. And so it was like just being just out of the loop. You know what I mean? Like eventually getting that call, like 2-3 hours later saying you don't have to I was literally like, okay, they said the park is closing, but like I have to work, and I was ready for work, and I was kind of sitting there. It was a little before 1, maybe or 12. It was basically like I was within 30 minutes of needing to leave for work and sitting there ready for work thinking, as far as I know, I might still have to go in for some reason before they finally called me. But it was thankfully having the next 2 days off, like automatically I didn't, there was no confusion about what was going on for the next couple of days after that, at least in terms of work. But I mean, Kim, I know you mentioned one of our roommates, she was from Jersey, so she knew people. Like I believe that including like some children who were like in daycare in the tower or something like that. It was pretty rough for her. And I mean, I know Kim, you had like, I don't know, acquaintances or like you, because the planes came out of Boston,
Yeah.
which is where you're from. So I don't know if you knew anybody directly, but you knew of them or something like that.
Yeah. So there's quite a few people from my hometown. It's one of my sister's friends' fathers was on the plane. That left from Boston. One of I think it was the first one that hit the towers. And then there might have been, I came to find out later, my first ex-husband, his family was very close with the pilot of that plane. But other than that, and then so, when the other struggle was trying to get in touch with my family, the phone lines were all down.
Yeah.
We are 1,300 miles away. Like, oh my God, we all thought they were coming for Disney next. So like, I remember spending hours just trying to get in touch with my mother and just be like, I'm okay. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. Like, and that day too, we'd find out that a girl I used to take care of had passed away. So it was just like a double shot. It was rough. And I remember too, they'd offered us to work at the hotels to entertain all the guests. And I was just like, I don't want to. I don't want to. Like, I just literally could not unglue myself from the TV. And I don't know when we started drinking that day, but I was just like, I can't function at all right now. Like, I didn't want to leave
it wasn't too early. I will say that we did not start drinking super early because I have this weird memory of us. We went to dinner. We went and had Pizza Hut for some reason, which but like, we went to Pizza Hut on 192 in Kissimmee, and we were like the only people there, like the only people in the restaurant except for the like one or two servers or whatever. And it was really just eerie, because like that was a super touristy area, and like, so we did start drinking, but I think it was later. I want to say it was like at least 7, but probably more like 8 or 9. Because we definitely Pizza Hutted first, but like, I mean, I don't know, Brian, like as someone who didn't have to work, you were over 21, like, and I know you said it took you, for me, I realized what was going on, at least to an extent pretty early on, because I was like watching the TV and seeing it happen right as I woke up. And it's hard to, at that point, it's like, well, this is the first freaking thing I'm seeing when I'm waking up. I can't separate that from anything else right now. But like, I don't know, how did you go about the rest of your day, knowing that you had the day off? And
this is going to come off as super insensitive. Please understand that at the time, I was a 22-year-old male who was, really enjoying the freedoms of Florida. So after we got the phone call that we were all off, we started calling a couple of our friends and realizing that all of our friends were off too. So we called a pool party at Vista Way, and we had one of the largest ones that I attended there. And I know it's really insensitive, but we were all off, and we went to the pool.
I mean, I think you can. Saying it was insensitive, just like it was maybe insensitive for Kim and I to go eat at Pizza Hut like nothing was wrong and start drinking, and we were under 21, you can say it was insensitive, but also like how people handle trauma, as long as you're not harming anybody else, how you handle trauma is how you handle trauma, and that's valid. You know what I mean? That's
fair. Yeah. We were trying to, like, I remember just thinking, like, man, like we were all together. This is, like I said, it happened after I got the phone call saying that my buddy wasn't working and I wasn't working the next day, or that at least our departments, like the vacation planning, we knew that was not going to be open the next couple of days.
They weren't about to be selling tickets and planning.
Exactly.
They had no idea what was going to happen.
Exactly. And so they were just letting us know that. And at the time, I do remember them, I don't want to say locking down the places, but I remember you couldn't have guests in that day. Like, so if you normally can check people in and check people out. I remember they wouldn't let you check in, and you couldn't go anywhere because it was like a national, I wouldn't say emergency, but I guess it was a national emergency.
Oh yeah, it absolutely was.
They wouldn't let us leave, right? Like the buses weren't working. They weren't taking you back to the parks, right? Because of everything that was going on. So we were all kind of, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say stranded because we were at home.
Yeah,
but
if you didn't have a car, you were kind of
if you didn't have a vehicle, you couldn't take the buses that were provided by, because they were only running, what I remember, dropping people off, not taking people back because the parks were closing.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
And so Kevin, or I hate to say his name, but we decided to call the people we knew, and we had a party, and it was festive. It was one of those serious ragers.
I feel like we knew that there were parties going on, but I don't think we went. I think we talked about it, but we were like, we don't really feel like being around other people. Although to be honest, looking back now, I kind of wish that we had gone to a party, because we had a lot of roommate drama that came out of that night. Because again, people handle trauma differently, and the way we were handling it was different from the way we were expected to handle it by our roommates, and
projecting.
Yeah. So it did cause us Kim and I some drama, both that night and things were very cold for a while immediately after. And then they eventually built up to us having to go to a housing meeting, which I'd totally forgotten about until Kim mentioned it on the last podcast. I forgot we had to go to a housing meeting. It all started because of us being insensitive or whatever. But listen, I'm not saying we weren't. To our roommates, we were being insensitive. Again, we were handling our trauma, a different way than they were handling theirs, and a different way than they expected us to handle theirs.
Yes.
But I don't know. I feel like it was after that day, though. It was like things just kind of, for the next couple days, after dealing with things that one day, for the next couple days, it was like, okay, I have these days off. I'm just going to hang out with my friends and do the things we've been doing partying wise that we, the things that we do on our days off, except for go to the parks, because we couldn't. Again, don't remember how many days they were closed for. I just actually tried to look it up, but I'm just finding all these 20-year remembrance things that don't say. I think it was just that day, though. It might have been the next day too. It might have been the 12th as well. But go ahead.
I was gonna say what I think. I didn't mean to say insensitive. I did mean to say insensitive, but what I think the difference is, what I haven't did a good job painting a picture. What you mentioned was, when we're dealing with the pandemic that we're going through right now, we are bombarded with the information almost immediately, like you mentioned. And when the 9/11 happened, you said the cell phones were nowhere near utilized, and we were still on cordless phones, and so the information, like you said, were coming across the ticker, and so you had 3 or 4 television stations that was giving you information. So instead of having the opportunity, and the internet was available, but it wasn't updated or utilized at the speed or rate that we use it right now. So right now, if you want to find out information on something, if with a good 10-minute hard search, you can get to the bottom level on just about anything. Back then, that wasn't possible. So the information trickled to us slower. So we had a much slower reaction than to those type of crises that we do now. I had a delayed emotional, when pandemic is one thing, or when, if that were to happen now, it'd be one thing. But when it happened then, it was just, you were watching TV. The realness of it was only when you, when I look at Kim's face and see the remorse come through from the grievance, right? And that's the same thing there was someone else there who had a family member that was there, and that's when it starts to become real. But you don't have the Twitter and the Instagram and the TikTok to see those, right? We just had the news, which we felt the same way then as we do now about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a 50-50 thing there, because it's I know for me, I hate watching videos. I like to read my news. So and I don't have we don't have cable. I haven't had cable television in almost a decade now. It's been 7 years, 8 years. I just stopped paying for it because I just didn't care. And but so we weren't getting the immediate live videos on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, or Facebook Live, whatever that, we would get now. But what we were getting is that constant feed on the television, on the news channels, literally, I think on like every major channel. There might have been channels that weren't news channels that were showing stuff, or channels that weren't news channels. I feel like we tried to watch other things and they either like weren't online or they were showing news stuff. So in a way it was like, for me at least, that's probably more real than what I would know than what I would be seeing now, just because of how I prefer to, consume newsy stuff. But also like it was, we're seeing that third person perspective of the news, the reporters and everything, versus the videos that came out eventually, like days later, of the people who were right there, that shared their videos with news stations. And we were seeing those, and those like crazy first person perspectives. I just like, it's to this day, I can't watch anything from that day. Like I have watched them in like way back in the past. Certainly like soon after it happened, but I am a very like empathetic person. I could be like just barely acquaintances with you, and if your cat dies, I will cry for you. So like imagine what it is when there's like people, like Kim, who kind of knew people that were on the planes, and like even Danny, our roommate, even though we'd kind of gotten into it with her that night, knowing that she knew people who were there in the towers and everything. Yeah, it was, it wasn't a great time for an empathetic person, let me tell you. But so I guess, I don't know. I think that's where we were, what we were doing when we found out what was happening. And again, the procedure for your location, if you weren't working, what happened, et cetera. I mean, Bryan, like you said, you weren't supposed to be working and you got called and told, nope, not coming to work tomorrow or the next day either. I mean, I was called and told I'm not working that day, and I had the next couple of days off anyway. I don't know how soon. I know I went back on my Monday. I didn't have any additional days off after that, I don't think. Like I'm 98% sure I went back on what, so that would have been Wednesday, Thursday, so Friday. But everything was different. I mean,
immediate security.
Oh God, yeah. Like
that's what I remember the most. The immediate security everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we, as Magic Kingdom employees, we were kind of used to the bag checks when we were leaving, because they always checked your bag to make sure you weren't taking costumes, because that was back when you couldn't bring your Magic Kingdom costumes home because, magic. But I don't remember them ever checking our bags going into work until we came back from that. Which I get, Kim, I think it's probably the same for you, right?
Yeah. So I was going to like back up a little bit and
yeah. Go ahead.
Talk about that night and the drama and, so Bryan, I was trying to connect with Danny. Like we said, we've been drinking and it's not an excuse at all. And I was trying to, I think she had probably been out with the other roommate or gone to someone else's apartment, and I think she came back in. I was like trying to connect and be like, people from my city too. They were involved. And I used the word crispified. And it was the wrong word to use. Crispified, and it was the wrong word to use. It came out wrong. It was all, I own it 1,000%. I still regret it. I mean, 20 years later. And I woke up to like a nasty note the next morning comparing crispified to fried chicken or something else of that nature. And it was just, no matter what I tried to do, it was never resolved. Never, there was tension from there on out. And I understand, like, I don't know how many people she actually lost, or if there was people that weren't found for a matter of days. But that's what did the harm. It was totally 1,000% my fault. As for going back to work, I thought I went back on Thursday or Friday. I don't remember, but yeah, like the bag checks, I think as soon as you get off the bus to get into MK, I can't remember. And then like when my parents came down, I think maybe it was closer to December that they came down. But yeah, when you went to go into the parks, like they immediately started the bag checking your bags, the wands, like the whole nine.
Yeah. I think a lot of people weren't too happy about that change because it was like nobody was planning on it or expecting it. And it's like, to be honest, I'm just still to this day shocked that they didn't have any sort of security checks before people went into the parks before that. You know what I mean? Like maybe back in like the 70s, it would have been, or early 80s, fine, don't. But like at this point, Universal had been doing security checks on everybody that came in, for God knows how many years. And it was literally only after September 11th that Disney, just like Bryan said, like immediately you're going into the parks as a guest, you are getting your bags checked, like, and getting because they didn't have the actual metal detectors installed yet, obviously. I don't know where they got all those wands. They must have been borrowing them from Pleasure Island. Like that's the only thing I can think of is that they were like, shoot, we've got a whole bunch of these things from Pleasure Island. Like quick, let's like gather those up and like parcel them out. But like, I mean, I know also like, I don't know if it was the same for you, Bryan, because I think you guys kind of had shorter hours anyway as vacation planning CPs, but like my hours immediately went down to like the bare minimum that they had to give us, which was either 30 or 32 hours. I feel like it was probably 32. Yeah. It was 30 or 32, down.
But my hours went down. I definitely was frustrated with the extra security because for me, I totally understood what happened in New York. And there was all this speculation that it could happen at Disney, or that they might have Disney, or they might hit Disney next. And then I remember the president going online at the time, or giving a speech and telling everyone to get back to normal and go down to Disney World. I remember him specifically saying that. He's like, we can't let this stop us. We have to keep going on. We need to take kids, go down to Disney World. And I remember not that weekend, but maybe the following weekend, but shortly after, whenever he made that comment, there were lines. The lines were so long. That was the first time I had super long lines, and people were getting frustrated and surprised that the lines were so long after such a tragedy. And that was the first time that it really dawned on me how ironic the situation is that we're afraid, and so we put up all of these security measures, but then we tell everyone to go on vacation. And so when they go on vacation, there's all these extra new security measures, which makes them even more fearful because there's longer lines and it's harder to get through the airports. It's harder when it's harder to get into the actual the actual parks, right?
Yeah.
Even just to get the tickets. I remember the lines to get into the parks surpassed the lines to just get the tickets.
Yeah.
They were standing side by side because of the new security measures, and they didn't expect such an influx of people after the tragedy. And I just remember thinking how moronic it ended up being. I guess that's the word for it. I don't, if you get what I'm trying to say, right? Like,
it's a little bit
building a failure, right? Like,
yeah.
Go here, everybody go here right now so that we can forget about it. But while you get there, we made everything harder for you to get in longer. We made things harder, and it takes longer for you to get things done in the first place. But go down there and do that anyway. Forget about it all and go back to normal. But we have all these extra things that weren't there before.
Yeah, like you can't blame Disney for not being prepared for all of a sudden needing to have all these extra security measures.
No, that wasn't them. That's not it. It was more of the like how.
No. I didn't feel like you were blaming them at all. I mean, no. I totally get what you're saying. I mean, and the crazy thing is like for that immediate like. For that like immediately after where things kind of like where it picked up, but it was like maybe I don't know, maybe it was just the front of the park that was bad because they were not staffing properly to sell tickets. They didn't have the staff or didn't want to pay the staff for the security. Probably they didn't have it yet at that point. But like, I mean, on the inside, like the rides and stuff, like I said, like our hours were cut. I mean, I did not get more than 32 hours a week. I'm assuming it was 32. It was either 30 or 32. I'm assuming it was 32 because I think it was like a little bit more than part-time people. So like I didn't get more than 32 hours a week. I worked like 1:30 to 7:30 with a 45-minute lunch, an unpaid 45-minute lunch and an unpaid 15-minute break. I basically, I was paid for 6 hours a day for months. I did not get more than 32 hours a week until Thanksgiving. And like, it was, there was no one there. I mean, my mom came down to visit in early October and we walked onto every single ride. There was no need for fast passes. Like, nobody was there. I mean, I have never, and I've been to the parks in off season since then, and they've been, not crowded, but I've never seen it like that. It was 50% of the not crowded that I've seen any other time. And I know like Pirates was one of those rides there where like we didn't have Fast Pass back then, and we never had a line. I can tell you the 2 times we had a line was Thanksgiving weekend and Christmas and New Year's. So that Christmas, New Year's week and Thanksgiving week, that's it. Kim worked in Fantasyland. So like she had the more popular rides that maybe also didn't have the high like flow through that Pirates. There's a word for it, but that they use, but I can't remember what it is. Like we were able to onboard and offboard people so quickly, but your rides were like a lot more popular and like usually backed up. Yeah. But even you, I mean, it wasn't crazy for you either, I'm assuming.
I can't remember. One of the things I do remember is I think they had stopped the castle shows for a little while. I'm really like struggling with my memory.
Yeah.
But I remember they were testing for new ones one day and they lit off fireworks. When I tell you, I ducked and people around me ducked. And it was like, what is going on right now? Just because I was right behind the castle. I was either in Snow White or Winnie the Pooh. And I just remember being scared to hell, like what's going on right now? And I think we got like the phone call or, those phones we had or something just said they're testing fireworks shows, and the managers came around. You had so many people to reassure at that one point because it was just like, what just happened? I'm struggling to remember the crowd.
I mean, I know that it wasn't busy for sure, because I went to we used to, we had already been going to the parks a bunch on our days off, but that started the point where every time we had our weekend, it usually overlapped by at least one day. And Kim and I would go to the parks and we would literally just go like usually studios, and we would ride tower and coaster and not have to wait like more than 10 minutes each. And of course it was middle of the week, it was fall. So back then fall was still off season, which that's hilarious because there's no such thing as off season at Disney World anymore. No. When I lived there like 2016 to 2018, it was like, there was like a 6-month period where I didn't have a day job. I just had my own company, and then I could do the work whenever I kind of wanted. And I would take days and like meet up with friends who were visiting, to go to Disney. And I mean, it would still be an hour wait for like most rides. But yeah, like back then, their fall was still an off season. So it was like the off season. And I don't know when they started the fireworks and stuff back up, but I do know that, after that, there was a point where they'd gone so long without having fireworks shows that they actually had fireworks they needed to use because fireworks don't last forever, right? No. So they had the Fantasy in the Sky every single night, because I closed every single night at 7:00 on weekdays or 8 or 9 on the weekends. And as I was leaving, it was always Fantasy in the Sky going off above us. It was actually really like a race to see, like, can we get to the Magic Kingdom bus before Fantasy in the Sky starts? Because if you don't, then you got to wait, like the line builds up and you got to wait for 3 buses, because they couldn't run the buses and the fireworks were going off and stuff to the parking lot. But yeah, so they definitely, that was another weird difference. Like, I think nowadays they actually do fireworks every night anyway. But that's when it started, because they didn't used to do them in the middle of the week. Like they would go several days, if not the whole, if not Monday through Thursday, without having fireworks shows. And again, I don't know if I think they have them every day now, but it definitely started back then. But back then there was nobody there to watch them really, but they needed to get rid of the fireworks. So that's how they did it.
I don't remember them closing that early. I always felt like I worked till like 9. Maybe I just can't. Maybe my memory is just foggy.
Oh no, the only reason I remember this is because when I submitted, like when I went back to college, I had to submit like a report that showed how much what I worked and when. So I kept like, cause they also we had printed like schedules. I kept all of my printed schedules. And from September 11th through November, really, on weekdays, I was done by like 7:45, depending, because it's like where I worked, it was like depending on which position you were closing. Like if you were tower, you weren't. They had you clock at 7:40, clock out at 45 minutes after closing time. But the other positions were only 30. Or maybe it was, I don't know. There might have been, it might have been tower unload or whatever. But like, so I mean, weekends it was open later still, 9, 10 maybe, as time went on. But yeah, I mean, for me, I was privileged in that, I mean, whatever, I'm a privileged white girl, man. Like I grew up in a home where my parents were poor as crap when I was a kid. They started their own business. Then they had money, you know what I mean? When I was like in middle school or so, not super rich or anything, but well enough off that when I went down to the college program, I had a cell phone that they paid for. Now, granted, I wasn't supposed to use it except for in emergencies, but I had a cell phone that they paid for. My car had been bought and paid for, which was like partially me and partially them, whatever, it doesn't matter. But like my car was paid for. They paid my car insurance while I was there and while I was in college, up till I think when I turned 21. And then, when I was down there, like I needed to work to do fun things, to pay my rent, obviously my Vista Way rent, $82 a week that it was. But yeah, that like, other than that and buying, food, I really didn't, that money was any money that I made was like, I could save it, which like I did that. I mostly just bought a whole bunch of Disney junk that I have since thrown or given away like 95% of it. But yeah, I mean, so the shorter hours and the not working so much wasn't a big deal for me at the time. It did become a bigger deal like later when I would go back to Disney, like as seasonal and stuff. Cause I actually did kind of need the money when I was like on my own more. But yeah, at the time, like I was lucky, I wasn't one of those people who had all these additional bills to worry about. I was still on my parents' health insurance, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. What about you guys? Like I'm sorry, like sorry, not, I guess sorry, not sorry. I can't really help the fact that like when I was down there, that my money was more fun money than anything, like other than food and rent, cheap as rent. Like it didn't hurt me all that much that I only was getting 32 hours a week, but I know a lot of people it did.
I know people who needed the extra hours and stuff that needed the money. Definitely. I'm not saying I was privileged. I just happened to have other sources of income at the time to sustain me. It's the best way to say it.
Yeah. We don't need to get into that too much.
No, yeah. So that's I was fine, but I don't remember how much my hours were reduced. I definitely remember them going down.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, like having a car was like especially nice at that point, except for when gas. That did hurt a little bit because like gas was another thing that I had to pay for on my own. So I did actually start carpooling with coworkers because I hated taking the buses. The bus schedules were different. Like they had fewer buses running for a long time, except for like when things picked back up over the holidays. I remember that. And like, but yeah, like I remember carpooling with coworkers because, and maybe even sometimes with Kim, if our hours matched up on weekends or something, because gas was like $1.26 a gallon, y'all. It was $1.26 a gallon when I got my license.
$1.26 back then?
Oh yes, it was. That was at the gas station right by Vista. It was $1.26. Don't ask me why I remember this. I have this weird memory for numbers. It was $1.26 at the gas station by Vista, the one that was next to the Chick-fil-A. And then if you went like a mile and a half down the road to the Hess station, I think it was on the way to Kissimmee, it was like $1.21 or something, or $1.19. It was like 6 or 7 cents cheaper, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that does add up, especially because I was driving a Chevy Blazer at the time. The thing didn't get but 20 something miles a gallon. But like, Yeah, $1.26 a gallon. And when I got my license, gas was 99 cents a gallon.
I remember that.
Okay.
I remember gas being 99 cents. I do.
Like-
I definitely, and that makes sense because that would have been 97, and so 2001. Yeah, $1.26 is about right.
Which, and I just remember us being like, oh my God, gas is so, and it didn't happen immediately. It took a couple weeks, maybe a month, but it did. It went way up. And for us back then, especially when you're making $6 an hour, and yeah.
What was our pay rate? Was it $6.18?
Mine was a flat 6.
I think we were 6. You might have gotten a little more.
Yeah, maybe as a vacation planner you did. I don't know. No, I don't know though. I feel like all college program, no matter what you did, was 6
because we all got the same flat.
There was like a couple years later, because it was after I worked in foods, but like several years later, they upped the foods pay rate. Like if you had to work quick service, you made $6.50 an hour. So they were like, oh, you have to work the shitty job, so we're actually going to pay you 50 cents more.
They should.
I don't disagree with that. But yeah, back then it was a flat 6 an hour. Now, granted, Florida didn't take state taxes, so there was that little, oomph. But yeah, I mean, gas going up to $1.26 a gallon. It's like when you subtract it was $67 or $69 a week, I believe, for the 6-person, the 3-bedroom apartments, and $82. Like I said, I have a weird fucking memory for numbers.
It was $67.
It was okay, and it was $82 a week for us. So when you're only working 32 hours a week, even without the state income tax, being taken out, I mean, it adds up when you're paying rent and buying groceries. I mean, I lived off of ramen noodles and frozen pizzas and grilled cheeses the entire college program, pretty much.
Look how healthy you are. I lived off of junior bacon cheeseburgers from the Wendy's and Milwaukee's Beasts. I would literally take $20, buy $12 of Milwaukee's Beast pack, and spend the other money on getting 5 or 6 junior bacon cheeseburgers and eating those throughout the day.
I ate a lot of Burger King though. I did. It was, if I was working, usually what it was is if I was working later, like if something happened and I got off work later than I was supposed to during the week, or if it was a weekend and I was working later, I just was like, I don't feel like cooking when I get home. Cooking. I mean, I gained about 30 pounds on the college program. Like, yeah, I went from about 155 to, when I got home from the college program, I weighed 185, which is the heaviest by a good 20 pounds that I've ever weighed in my life. So, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I probably would have been living off that shitty food regardless of whether or not my hours were cut. So yeah, I mean, other than, security and work hours getting cut, I'm trying to, so what about like personally, like outside of like the money thing, because obviously that, I think for all of us, and I mean, Kim, it might've been, I don't know, was it different for you in terms of like getting your hours cut? Was it problematic for you to have your hours cut, or were you kind of still okay? I can't remember.
I struggled. I definitely struggled. So while I was down there, my parents were going to pay like my credit card bills, a couple other bills. I must have had a cell phone at the time, but I don't think I brought it with me because it wouldn't have worked. I can't remember, because I thought I had my cell phone like since I was in high school, but I can't remember. But they were paying for that. But my dad's job always had him traveling, and that was money. I mean, but when 9/11 happened, he didn't travel as much, so they weren't taking in as much, so they couldn't pay my bills. So like I dealt with a lot of credit issues, like right from being an 18-year-old. And I remember like I couldn't go out all the time. Like you had to like bribe me. Like I definitely struggled because they couldn't send me as much money, or like I wasn't making as much. It was definitely hard for me.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did bribe you sometimes, but like, listen, whatever. If that was like one small good thing I did in the college program was like help my roommate who was struggling, and like make sure she eats and like has fun. Like I don't.
I lived off like deli meats and bread, like you know what I mean, like sandwiches with my work. Like I had your basic sandwich. It was always cereal in the morning because that was my thing. And I can't remember if I made dinner. But like it was always like a sandwich, bring it to work because deli meats weren't that expensive, a loaf of bread. But I always remember going to the Publix or Walmart, taking out $80 for grocery shopping. That was my money for the week. Because after that and rent, then I was down to gas money if I could have it. I had my mom's little car, but
yeah, I didn't have a credit card till I was like 21 or 22. So I at least didn't have to worry about like racking anything up while I was down there. Yeah. But I also, I hated asking my parents for money. Yeah. So for sure, it was like anything I was doing outside of the things that they covered, which again was a lot. I think I had to ask them for money once. Like in October, maybe. It was, I think it was when my mom came down to visit me. I was like, hey, can you spot me a couple $100? Cause like, I'm really tired of eating like frozen pizza and ramen every night. But and again, like there's probably some things I could have not done, like drink so much on the college program that would have helped with that. But like, to be honest, I don't remember buying that much booze. Like I really don't remember.
We
like
had that one handle of Jim Beam
that lasted us like the whole fucking college program. People kept giving us alcohol. I'm not kidding you. People kept giving us alcohol. Like every time somebody left, because that's the other thing I wanted to talk about was like in terms of how things changed personally was a lot of people left. A lot of people left.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, you are absolutely. We lost so many people in our building. I do remember that.
The weird thing was I was remembering like losing some of our neighbors. I believe there was a guy named Bryan maybe that left right after 9/11. I thought that our neighbor Fino left, but then I realized I'd misremembered, and he actually got fired for smoking pot. Like they caught him smoking pot, like in Vista or something, like, or Chatham or something like that. I think it was Chatham. Like he lived in Vista, but he was in Chatham smoking pot and got caught. But yeah, we lost a lot of people, and not only did we lose a lot of people, but there were a lot of people, including Kim, who were like really considering going home afterward. Whether it was because of money or because they just didn't feel safe, or just
their parents.
Yeah, wanted to be back with their families. Yeah, like I mean, so Kim, like I remember you being seriously considering going home, and me being like, just sitting back, like thinking, like I'm not going to be mad at her. She does because I get it, but also please don't go home, Kim. Don't leave me here. I don't know if I can do this without you.
I remember like the only chance I had to go home, like before towards the end, it was like a chance to go home for my aunt's wedding, but I don't. Or maybe I considered it. I was probably so homesick by that point. I'm like, I'm not gonna, give this up because I'll couldn't go back to school because it's already way too into the semester. I'm like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah. But
I remember like a few days after we must have had it off or something. Like I remember having this epiphany. I remember being in the room across the hall, the boys' room. I was on someone's computer. I was talking to like my first high school boyfriend, like confessing my life to him. Like he didn't know, but like he was, my first. And so I'm like, just, you thought the world was ending. So I was going through and like just talking to like all these people, and there was a boy back home, and I was just like still hung up on. I was like, oh, I need to talk to Bryan and everything. And it was just a weird, like, going through this epiphany and trying to connect with everyone and just making peace with everyone, like a lot of people did.
I don't remember so much of that, but also I had my set group of friends from back home who I talked to regularly, who I missed. But I went down on the college program and like this, I need to like reinvent myself. I need to get away from where I grew up and away from the people I grew up with, no matter how much I love them. And Bryan mumbled like a bit ago, like the institution, and like, when did we start calling ourselves? Like, when did we start calling ourselves that? Because
it was legendary in my mind. When I left the college program, I took that back with me. Thank you very much. I don't even know why. Congratulating that. I remember Kim would say that all the time. We're the institution, and I'm like, I didn't get it. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, like no, it was awesome. I loved it. I'm not hating.
I forget how or what. I mean, obviously it was after like Stone Cold, but we both like, I'd always liked wrestling. Tara had gotten into wrestling, and somehow she's just like, we're just going to call ourselves the Institution. It's like,
we're tag team over here.
Yeah.
Actually, we were watching, Dave and I were watching a thing about WWE. Well, it was WWF back then. And like after 9/11, because like they were supposed to have a show that night. They were supposed to have SmackDown live in Houston. And they're like, we can't do it that night. It got canceled. So they did it like Thursday. It was just showing all the people that were coming out. And it was like Molly Holly, and then the Hurricane, not the Hurricane guy, was it the...
the Hurricane and Mighty Molly.
Yes. And I was like, I saw that. I was like, Tara, the Hurricane. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's the Halloween costumes is in October, chat. But yeah, that was a Halloween costume that I did that year. But yeah, I don't know when we started calling ourselves the Institution. It was early on though. Like it was definitely so like soon after September 11th. Like when I say soon, I'm talking less than 2 weeks was when Kim had started seeing this guy, and they introduced me to his roommate, and they were like hoping that we would hook up. Which was hilarious because like the first night we met, I was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I don't like his southern accent. Like, I don't like his stupid nickname. Like, so
I'm just loving life right now.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time talking about my romantic.
My biggest memory of the Institution. Well, I mean, I had a T-shirt. You guys remember the white T-shirt party? We had a white T-shirt party once, and we all had T-shirts, and we were writing stuff on the back of each other's T-shirts. Kim wrote the Institution. I had that T-shirt for so long. And then I had a roommate in Florida 8 years later that just stole all my stuff, stole all my shot glasses, stole all my DVDs, all my T-shirts. And Kim did such a good job of writing the Institution across the back of the shirt. And I took it back to college. So the Institution, they thought I was the Institution. I'm like, no, those are friends. Those are friends. You see all those
crazy girls.
Stuff right here. These are
These
memories.
girls from New England who thought they were hot shit.
Just hilarious.
I went to University of Illinois. There was lots of white girls there. Let's just be clear about that. But it looked awesome. That's how I remember the Institution. In my mind, I always see it as it's written across the midsection of my back on the back of a T-shirt, and it's really cool. You took your time on it. We were drunk. It was a little. You did bubble letters like you wrote. Kim, it was Kim and Tara, the Institution. Oh God, I remember the party just from the beginning, but. I remember throwing it with those two guys that you were just talking about.
It had to be a Building 15 party.
Yeah.
It was definitely a Building 15 party. The building. You got to make sure to have like one of the last episodes about how we changed all the rules at Building 15.
Oh yeah, no. That's gonna be the
Building 15 changed the rules.
We're skipping December.
We wrote it for you.
We're skipping December because I don't have time in December. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of what changed and what happened after our college program that we need to discuss. But I mean, yeah, like honestly, and speaking of just us becoming the Institution and everything, like it was actually after, and part of this was because we hadn't had so much time before September 11th to get entrenched in like our work, crews. But like it was soon after, like soon-ish after September 11th that again, so many people left. And things were just kind of weird. Like everybody was working different hours. We weren't all kind of on the same closing shifts and stuff like that. Like, so I actually ended up, becoming closer friends with the full-time and part-time people I worked with. And that was absolutely like, it wasn't entirely because of September 11th, but, part of it was also because there was only myself and one other college program person working at Pirates. So like everybody else that I worked with was part-time or full-time and a couple seasonal people, I guess. But yeah, I mean, between becoming closer friends with them and that led to like me getting into wrestling and just also like, not that, Kim and I were already like a thing, we were a pair. We went everywhere together, did everything together, unless one of us was working and the other one wasn't. But like, before we close out, I think that I want to touch on how close the people who remained on the college program became because of what we all went through together.
Yeah.
I know it was only one day and that nothing happened at Disney World itself other than the parks having to close for that day and maybe also September 12th. I can't remember. But like there was this, I feel like there was this just extra need for all of us to, and I think this is kind of part of what led to how crazy it actually became as the fall went on, but starting literally like within a week or two of, September 11th happening. I'm trying to word this and it's like, it's hard for me to figure out how to word it, but I really feel like that there was just this, you could literally not know a person at all. You could just meet them at a party a few times and you still, every time you saw each other at parties or outside of parties, it was like you were best friends and you were hugging. I don't know, like, and maybe after that, it was like that for future college programs. It certainly wasn't like that for me on my 2002 college program though. I don't know. How do you guys think, do you guys agree with me here that like we all became just a little bit closer or just a little bit more open with each other and a lot crazier maybe because of what happened and how it was this sudden, God, we're all in our late teens and early 20s. And like, it felt like the world was ending, maybe it was just that one day or for that day and a couple days after it felt like the world was ending, but that really like gets you at that age.
It did. So I ended up doing several programs after that one. That was my first extended one. I left, came back. That was easily the most memorable, impactful. I had plenty of good times and good memories and things of that nature. But the sets of friends that I made from that program right there, Kevin Ford and the Top Gun crew, which you're referring to, you didn't care for their names too much. Like those were outside of the Building 4 boys, but the Top Gun crew and Kevin Ford and the Vacation Planners, like those were the highlights, right? I tried to live back on those memories. Those were some of the really, really good times, right? So there was definitely the need for, I don't want to say relationships, but connections. Yeah. After that.
I think need is a good word, but I also feel like it was just automatic. Like we'd all been through, and I'm going to use the words traumatic event because, it wasn't as traumatic for some of us, myself included, as it was for others who actually, knew people or were from that area, et cetera. I would not. And I just, we mentioned our roommate Danny earlier. I'm not on the same level as Kim, who, knew people. We are not on the same level as Danny, who knew people who were in the towers, but just, I don't know. I remember there was like a Vista Way talent show or a college program talent show. It was held at Vista Way in maybe early October. And there was a guy with a guitar who sang, I believe it's an Enrique Iglesias song, like, "You Can Be My Hero, Baby." But
I remember that.
He sang it, he rewrote the lyrics to be about September 11th. I don't remember the lyrics at all, but I remember everybody in that fucking room was crying. Like,
was it indoors? Was it at the pavilion?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Oh, I totally remember that. Oh, you just jogged some memories. Wow.
Right?
I do.
It bothers me. You might not have been there, Kim, honestly. I don't know if you were there. But now I got to look it up because it's like, it was Enrique Iglesias, right? Hero.
Oh, he could be my hero. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is. But more,
Yeah, hero. Like, let me be your hero. Would you dance if I asked you to dance? Would you run and never look back? But he slightly, and the weird is this is the first time I heard what is, I don't know if you can call it filk, because filk is like fan fiction lyrics. So like it's when somebody takes a popular song and rewrites the lyrics to go with like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or whatever. But this guy took that song And he, first of all, he played the guitar very well and had a guitar somehow for some reason at Vista Way, which is hilarious to me. Like, you brought your guitar to Vista Way. Like, that guy was like, he brought that guitar to get laid. And I hope he got laid so good that night because that song was fucking beautiful. Like, right? Like, I hope he got laid so good, like 10 times just because of that song. I don't remember the lyrics at all, but I remember just like he was good and what he wrote was good and from the heart. And it was just, it was, I don't know. I mean, I think in conclusion to all of this, like you said, like I only did one college program after that and it was just a summer one, but I do feel like there was just an extra oomph to like our relationships, especially with our friends. But, cause like, I mean, I had roommates after that, but nobody was. And it probably didn't help that like my roommates after that, like on my 2002 college program. And then I don't know, I guess I can't really count when I lived at Vista for like 4 weeks at a time, but like that summer 2002, my roommate was the sweetest girl, but she was like from Kentucky and she was like not Mormon, but some other religion where she like didn't really drink. And it was, we didn't really have much in common. She was very, very nice, but like she was a good roommate, but she wasn't like a close friend. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, any last thoughts on just the experience that we had on the college program as a whole because of September 11th?
So September 11th is one of those lifetime defining events, similar to the pandemic, or if you, obviously.
Yeah, but those poor college program kids just got sent home.
Yeah. Any type of loss, any type of traumatic event, sits heavy. And especially if it's something that's shared on a grand scale, then the trauma that ensues afterward, everyone's kind of flowing through it, not simultaneously, but, we all experiencing the grief almost at the same time because it's happening. It's not like your mom passed away at one time and then cousin. We're all experiencing this as United States of American citizens. This happened perceived by to us on our soil by somebody on the outside. And that is the same as someone breaking into your house or attacking your family. You have a tendency to hold what you have close to you or grab what you have close to you closer out of fear. So I remember it being compared to like when JFK was shot. Sorry to bring that up, but like, where were you when do you remember where you were when JFK got shot? And for us, ours was, where were you during 9/11? I remember hearing that for years afterwards and typically feeling guilty. That's why I said earlier, because I was throwing a party essentially. And so the events that happened created the perfect environment on top of it being Vista Way and people being close and away from home already for us to even be closer. Again, because you're looking for that bond, that connection, and you're away from everything you already know. And this big, giant, tragic thing just happened. And so normally you would run to a comfort zone, a food, a family member, but you're 500 to 5,000 miles away from home, depending on which program you're on, if you're international. But, I think that it was a unique program because of those events that happened, right? It would be similar to those that had to leave because of the pandemic, except for they had to leave. Their event ended, right? When the pandemic hit for those, they shut down the college program. That was it. We just lost a day or two. And I'm not saying that as a trivial matter. I just mean we got to continue living through the experience. And that's what created this perfect environment for us to have these super symbolic relationships, right? I held on to a lot of the friends from that program longer than I did any of the other programs because exactly that. I mean, you guys might be some of the longest people that I've talked to, and this is proof in the pudding, right? And then some of the other people that you didn't want to mention, I stayed in contact with them for a very long time. Tara, you came to visit me a couple of times after the fact, and so I would agree with you 100% that out of all the programs, that one had the most, I think, impactful bonds. Don't get me wrong, I'm not swaying against any other of the impactful bonds that I've had, but as a collective, between, like I said, the institution, between the Top Gun crew, between my buddy Kevin Ford, who we were over at the Vacation Planners, and there was a couple of us. Those events really brought us together.
Oh, I mean, let me be clear. When I say like I don't really want to bring people up, it's more just because I don't want to talk too much about like really personal stuff.
That's fair.
At least not at this point, especially. But yeah, I mean, again, like, I mean, I guess, Kim, like, I don't want to co-opt like your, like, so your thoughts on just like the bonds that we had and everything. Like, I mean, same hat with us, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I would say just piggyback what you said. I think too, like being that, so young, my first time away from home, the only time I went to school was in Boston. It was only half an hour away, and I was home every weekend because I got hurt. So this is my first time away from everything. And like with the tension with the roommates, I didn't want to be in the apartment all the time. It was uncomfortable. I think like you found these people and you forged that bond. Like, you had someone to turn to. Tao was that person that I turned to. Like, okay, I need to get through this. We kind of just helped each other to get through it. I mean, our lives were so parallel at that time that we kind of just helped each other get through it. And yeah, I mean, I'm still friends with Josh on Facebook. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Like, I'm still friends with Josh too. So.
Yeah, and I see, still some people on the Facebook, but like just to have this, I didn't have that real great college experience. Like this was my college experience. Like I went to college, I lived there, it sucked, but this was my real like, you see everyone having these college roommate friends for life, and like this is that for me. Like no one, when I was at the party earlier, I'm like, yeah, I have a Zoom tonight. They're like, who? I'm like, with my Disney, the Disney college program. They're like, really? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I'm like, we were talking about 9/11 ago, and we were all through it together. I'm like, you don't get that kind of bonds. Like, I have similar bonds at work, but that's total different spectrum. That's like a law enforcement fireman bond. Like those are another, you don't know it until you're in it type of bond.
Yeah. But, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I have the bonds that I've created as an adult for sure.
Yes.
But honestly, like I did go to college. I did have like a freaking amazing time. Like I was in a sorority. But honestly, like I'm not really friends with any of those people anymore. Like I'm Facebook friends with a bunch of them, but like I don't see them. I don't talk to them really. And again, like we've said, like we just, as much as I might have had a really freaking great time in college with these people, that didn't, the bonds that I made with them did not transcend 2 fucking decades. And the people that I was friends with, I'm not Facebook friends, or if I am Facebook friends, it's like barely acquaintance Facebook friends with a lot of people from the college program. But, I mean, I'm closer friends with more of my 2001 college program friends than I am with my college friends. I've been in weddings. I've gone to weddings. I've, during the pandemic, like had, little Zoom chats with just like my friends, Jamie and Nikki and Linda, who all were actually Chatham people and stuff like that. Like, it transcended, not with everybody, of course, not with everybody. There's people I've lost touch with. Shoot, there's people that I mentioned on the last episode and tonight that's like, sometimes I wonder, like, what the heck? Like, I wish I could remember like Fino's last name, because I really love that kid. Like he was great. He was just like a really good like guy, really good friend. Don't know how he left the college program, and he like gave me his email, and like we never talked again because there was no Facebook or anything. But like, I mean, even there are so many people that I did lose touch with because they left after 9/11 or soon after, for other reasons like that. I still, especially in this instance, we've been talking so much about the college program. I think back and wonder like, what the heck happened to these people? Like I wonder how they're doing. But yeah, I guess on that note, any last thoughts about 9/11? Next month I want to do an episode that's talking that really gets into like the meat of the college program. But yeah, any last thoughts about 9/11 and how things change, anything like that? We good?
It made it harder.
Yeah.
It did. It did in a lot of ways. It made it harder, and weirdly, it also made it better.
It did. It made the bonds better. You're talking about all the different bonds that you made. I did have an awesome college program. I had an awesome college. I went to University of Illinois. I still talk to quite a few people from there. And then I stayed in Florida and made a bunch of awesome friends, and had some great experiences. But as you were talking, even through those experiences, I still keep remembering that really it was a unique bond from the 9/11 crew, from the fall 2001 program was super unique because of.
Oh yeah, because you also did spring and summer.
I did spring
guess.
and fall of 2001, the spring advantage of 2001, so that's spring and summer.
Yeah.
And then extended to the end of fall, went back, and then came back again and did the exact same thing in 2003.
Well, I guess before we close out, there's a question I have for you specifically, because you did spring advantage, so you were there because I don't think they had like just a summer program that year.
No, they did not have a summer. It was either spring advantage or fall advantage.
Yeah. So any people who were there on your spring program, did you feel that was the bond really that specific to like the fall advantage and fall people?
So my first college program, I wrote off, to be real honest with you. I do have a couple of them on Facebook that I'm friends with, but I would consider my first foray into it was a failure. Like, I did not do good the first round of I didn't make as many friends at all. I didn't get along with my roommates. I got to get moved. Like, it did the first part of it, the fall advantage. I've made some good friends, but nothing like that. And I made some friends after the other programs that came in, but like I said, the 2003 programs, I made some really good friends, and one or two of them I still talk to. But the 2001, seriously, that was the spring, or excuse me, the fall was the highlight. That time from right before 9/11, because that's when I started vacation planning to the end of I had some of the greatest times of my entire life those couple of months.
Same. Kim, same.
Yeah, like absolute set. You guys were there. You know what I'm talking about. It was great times. Like that I still remember, like I said, the what do we call it? It was the Black Light Party is what we called it. And we were writing on the right t-shirts. It was the Black Light Party.
Okay. Now I feel like I hope somebody has pictures of this because I don't think I do. Kim is the only one of us who didn't go back.
Yeah. So I had in May of 2002, I had a major hip surgery. So I wanted to go back. I left the college program probably, I mean, we can get into it, but like a week or two early. I was using the hip as a quasi excuse. I think I just got hit a wall and I got so homesick. I just wanted to get home. But May of 2002, I ended up having major surgery on my hip. So that canceled any kind. I think they brought the summer program back, but that canceled any kind of summer program. And I just never had the opportunity to go back, or never gave myself the opportunity to get back. I just kind of threw myself into school, into work again. Yeah. And just focused on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's our like January conversation really is like, what happened afterward? Okay. So on that note, I'm going to close us out. Thank you guys again for joining me. I know this is a little bit of a deeper, darker in a way conversation. But I'm really glad that we got to talk about this. I didn't want to do it. I know originally I was like, do I want to do this on September 11th? And then I was like, no, I don't want to. I want to wait a week. And to be honest, like the 20-year anniversary post, so many people were posting, and Kim had posted about it. I didn't post anything. And I think I saw the post that Kim made, and I was like, I'll read this like days from now. Cause I'm not like, I just, at that moment in time, like so many people were posting about it. I was like, I don't really want to think about this today. So, weirdly enough, on the 20-year anniversary, I guess. But all right. So thank you again, Kim and Bryan, for joining me. You can follow me across the web at a Geek Saga for updates on when you can catch the next episode in the Walt Disney World College Program 2001 20-year anniversary series. I'm guessing that the next episode is going to be Saturday, October 16th. And we'll be talking about really settling into the college program that turned out to be very different from what any of us were expecting. And also like the fun Halloween stuff that happened at Disney and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll get into some like real fun conversation.
Thank you for listening to Tara Lynn's A Geek Saga podcast. If you like what you heard, please check out my website, ageeksaga.com, or consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/ageeksaga.